Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Charlie.
And you've been with us before, and you've been behind the scenes. For those who don't know, Rabbi Barnett has been behind the scenes from the first day, from the first show, and every show since. So many times there are things that are happening that you don't know was because of this man. So, Rabbi, we really appreciate it, and we thank you for your dedication, not only to the Jewish people, but for this show in particular.
It's great. Thanks.
So, the way you grew up, give us a little bit about your history, and how much did you know about this upcoming holiday? How much did you know about, Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah?
I grew up on Long Island, and I went to Reform Hebrew School, and like pretty much everybody I knew, we knew absolutely nothing about Shavuos, and Shavuot we called it, but we didn't know anything about it. And I had a theory. The reason is because Hebrew school's over, and if Hebrew school's over, that's it. There's no more Judaism. Hebrew school's over. And really, the only place my contemporaries and I knew anything about Sinai was the movie The Ten Commandments. That's
Right.
where we got our Torah from. And there,
Right.
they get it all wrong. They basically have Moses giving the Torah to the Jewish people, not God. So I didn't know anything about the traditional claim of revelation at Sinai. It was a eye-opening experience to me. And I went to Dartmouth College, and I played tennis, went to Lehman Brothers, and then finally I ended up in the old city, and I bumped into this amazing program, Discovery, which one of the main segments is this area of evidence that you're talking about tonight.
It's amazing that I experience in many times when people say to me, "Wait, what are you talking about? God gave the Torah to Moses." I'm like, "No, he didn't." This concept of national revelation, right? The idea that the divine presence revealed itself to an entire nation of people. So, take us through the first time you heard that and your reaction.
So I heard it in Discovery, and the first thing you think is the game of telephone. Everybody thinks broken telephone. How could a message 3,000 years ago be the same message as today? But as you think about it, as they presented the construct, you realize it's a claim that could not have been made unless it was true. Meaning because it was historical in nature. And no one ever pointed that out before. In other words, if you take the supernatural part out of it, right, it's based on history like any other historical claim, like the Civil War, like that George Washington was president. There were millions of eyewitnesses. That's the basis of the claim. So it's a totally different claim than someone appearing to God, whether it was John Smith saying, I got the tablets, or whether it was Muhammad saying I went up on a horse up into heaven. It's I would call it, and you're a lawyer, evidentiary. Meaning it provides evidence, and there's all the other claims, they don't provide evidence at all. Meaning they don't even purport to provide evidence. Basically say, trust me, believe in me. So it's like, it's categorically a different claim. It's on a different level of credibility. And as you sit with it, you realize if such a groundbreaking thing did happen, you can imagine why it would be history right away. You can imagine why it wouldn't be questioned, and why all the nations of the world at the time, the Christians, the Muslims, everybody going forward, built themselves on Judaism. In other words, they changed everything else. Why didn't they change this?
Right.
You know what the obvious answer, I think, is because they couldn't. I mean, this was just historical fact.
It's interesting that what we're celebrating next is a holiday that, in the way you're describing, which is an interesting approach, just that it's not celebrated, but it really could be celebrated by most of the nations of the world, right? Mount Sinai, as opposed to, Passover, and as opposed to other things that may have had different historical ramifications, Mount Sinai is nestled in Islam, and it's nestled in Christianity, it's nestled in the major religions. So this isn't just, in many ways, our event. This is the world's event. And this really, like you're saying, is the structure of which other nations have built their infrastructure, because the claim, the story of national revelation requires it to be a totally different approach. Because, like you said, one person can have an opinion, but 3 million or 2 million, don't. So what's interesting, and I'll tell you my experience, and you can share your experience, is that I grew up in a much more traditional religious home. It never even dawned on me that this happened, and I never even thought about it. Meaning, I didn't think about national revelation because I don't know. It's the Torah. It's true. I never had a moment in my upbringing, regardless if I was like, good with the commandments. I wasn't always like, perfect with, doing this or not doing that. I can't say I was, but when it came to like what the book was, I was like, yeah, of course. Now, from your experience though, you were a lot different. You were much more skeptical. Share with us a little bit about that approach, because it's so important that people understand that no matter where you hold in this spectrum of like totally accepted or totally skeptical, there's a place for you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's the difference between a kid growing up and experiencing anything amazing, and then an adult experiencing something amazing for the first time. You see it as an adult with all your seichel, your wisdom, your maturity, and you want to dig deep into it. But it's interesting, the kid, if his parents tell him truth, right, and he takes it as such, that's a beautiful thing. Meaning that's not a negative thing. But when you're able as an adult, what I think the beauty of what about tshuva is about is you can dig a little bit deeper. Maybe you're like yourself and other people who grew up with it, really to ground yourself very strongly that, you're not going to bend, is when you can see it really deeply, the logic of it, Rav Yaakov Weinberg, he listened to a tape running to the Eiffel Tower after I left Israel, back and forth. I didn't even see the Eiffel Tower. I'm listening to this tape, and a reasonable person believed God spoke in Mount Sinai. And he was just giving over such insightful comments about what we were talking about before. And he said, this claim is so extraordinary. And if you're God, this is the one you're going with. You're not going to go with a less good claim. You're not going to go to Muhammad when no one can verify it. You're going with this claim. So he would go further and say, you know from that all the other revelation stories, they're lies. And when I thought about that philosophically, it blew me away. And it really, right. He ended up saying, who was the first person who gave this proof over to the Jewish people? First person was Moses. In Deuteronomy, he says, no people will ever make this claim again and live.
Right.
How could he be so sure?
Right.
Right. If he faked it, so to speak, how could he be so sure someone else wouldn't come on? Because he was saying, this is one claim, my friends, you can't make unless it's true. Yeah. And it's powerful. The more you sit with it, the more you think about how it could be false. That's kind of what we did. How could it be false? We thought about it like that. And we realized, hey, that doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense. And then you realize, you know what? This is history. And you should be proud of that. You should feel people should be grounded. You should feel, hey, stand on something rock solid. Yeah. And Sinai, that's it, man. It's the pivot. Everything totally revolves around Sinai.
It's totally true. I got to tell you a funny story that I remember one time we were having this conversation. We were sitting around in my firm that I was working for. So it was a bunch of lawyers sitting around talking about this. So, they were asking questions. I didn't bring it up. And they said, the revelation. And I said, think about it. You're lawyers, right? Just think about being in front of a jury and the difference between an eyewitness, so to speak, and a crowd of eyewitnesses. It's a different game. So one guy goes, maybe Moses convinced everybody that they saw it when they didn't. Like maybe he just went around and convinced everybody. And the guy next to me who just heard about it for the first time, he's like, Moses convinced Jews of something that they didn't see? It's like, you don't know the Jewish people, my friend. I'm like, if you think that somebody convinces 2 million Jews, are you out of your mind? It's so that never happened and that never will happen again.
It's so true because we tried to get out of it almost from the day we got into it in some level.
We were always fighting against it.
You're right. There was no place to go. You're absolutely right.
You're saying, like, as Golda Meir said, she's the prime minister of 5 million prime ministers. You ever seen a bunch of Jews be like, yeah, whatever someone told me?
Yeah.
Rabbi, what can I say?
That's us. That's us.
That's how we roll. That's how. Thank you so much for joining us, for your wisdom, for being a big part of this show, and your perspective, just how important it is for us to slow down and just sort of grasp it, because if you don't grasp national revelation slowly, it's going to run right by you and you're going to miss the punch and the power of what it really is.
How many times did you hear Moshe? Did you read Deuteronomy when he said this. And, we just blow over it. But when you really
Right.
think about it, you're like, wow, this is
Yeah.
great.
Awesome. Thank you, Rabbi. It's really, really a pleasure. And happy
care.
holiday.
Take care. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. For more content, like and subscribe, and be sure to tune in live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern at theshabbatshow.com or right here on YouTube.